There we go.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you're joining us. Uh, my name is Jason Walls from QA Cafe and co-director of the Broadband User Services work area at the Broadband Forum, the people who make TR-369 and USP and TR-181 and all of the wonderful set of standards involved in device management that are out there. Um, and we're going to talk about the USP product certification program. BBF calls it BBF.369 certification program. Um, for a couple of reasons today. We wanted to talk a little bit about why it is that people do and should be seeking certification and how to go about doing it. And there's a couple of reasons why we're doing that now. One is that some of our guests here at Nokia recently achieved certification on their Corteca product, and we wanted to hear their story about why it is that they did it and what their experience was like. And then we're going to dive into how to get certified, because we recently did just publish the next version of that certification program a couple weeks ago, actually. And so I have my esteemed colleague, Tim Winters, who is the editor of that program, here to talk about how to get your device certified. We are using Zoom for this, so please, if you do have questions, type them into the Q&A control panel in your Zoom control panel. That helps us triage the questions a little bit better. We can see what you asked, and all of our panelists can see that, so they can sort of grab the ones that they want to do. And we're not doing any small text or live demos, so if you do have trouble seeing what's going on, you can actually adjust your Zoom settings in Zoom. So uh, feel free to do that. So let me dive right in. These are the people who I have on the panel with me today, including my friend Tim Winters, who is our CTO at QA Cafe, who is deeply involved in the creation and proliferation of the certification programs. And then we have three folks from Nokia. We have David Parker, who is the product line manager for the Corteca platform that's recently been certified. Justin Doucette, who's actually head of Wi-Fi and probably has a lot to say about those things. And then also Tim Spetz, who, in addition to being a systems and standards architect at Nokia, is the USP project stream leader at the Broadband Forum, and my partner in crime for many a year. What are we going to talk about today? So I was going to start just showing you a quick slide about how much USP is growing and the survey we recently did. And then I'll hand things over to Justin, who's going to talk about the experience that the Nokia team had getting the USP certification and why they went about doing it, and then talk a little about Corteca and the process of that. And we'll talk about why you should get certified, and then Mr. Winters is going to switch over to how that works and what sort of things you should look for while you're doing testing, and a couple of things that you can do beyond certification for testing, including the upcoming plugfests that we're going to be hosting. Okay, so as I said, this is from our survey that we did last year of over 111 operators worldwide. It was pretty diverse. And as you can see here, I think, what was it, 86% of them, of the ones we surveyed, plan on deploying, either had already deployed USP or are planning on doing so within the next 12 to 18 months. And that was last year. So fast forward all these numbers and you can see that. And so this is accelerating very quickly. And so we are seeing the requests for certification come in, just so that people can prove that their devices are going to interoperate with whatever it is that the operator has going on the controller side, or, in a number of other factors. So to talk about why it is that that was done, I'm going to hand things over to Justin. And Justin, I'll control the slides for you. Just have me go ahead, and we'll talk about this certification case study with the Nokia Corteca product.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't see the slides. I'm not sure if it's something on my end, but I think I know them fairly well, or I don't know if there's a setting I can change here. But what I wanted to do is just quickly present to the audience what Corteca is and how this all fits into USB and what QA Cafe and the Broadband Forum is doing, just for a little bit of context. So I'll just take a couple of minutes to explain that, and then I'll turn it over to David Parker, who can continue to talk about our USB certification journey and where we're at, and also where we're going. So I think the first slide in my mind's eye is kind of presenting the broadband devices that Nokia builds and creates and deploys. So the broadband devices business unit is the division of Nokia that does CPEs. So we're a B2B2C organization within Nokia. So we build these devices. We sell them mainly to operators. I mean, we do some enterprise and some SMB business, but mainly to operators who then put these devices in people's homes so they can have great internet experiences, great Wi-Fi, great in-home networking, et cetera. And for the past several years, we've been investing heavily in software. And last year, we announced the Corteca brand, which is essentially made up of three elements. The first element is the Corteca devices themselves. So we have embedded software running on those devices that we brand Corteca. We have the Corteca Cloud, which is now a USB controller. We've upgraded to full USB, which is obviously a critical part of why we're here and what we're doing. And it does basically three management use cases. It does device management via USB, so basic password updates and reboots and things like that. It also does advanced Wi-Fi management. So this is where Nokia got started when it came to controllers or remote controllers. So we have an advanced Wi-Fi management solution that allows you to not only manage the Wi-Fi but also optimize the Wi-Fi. And we're using a combination of USB, TR-181, and also implementing data elements on the standard side to achieve that advanced Wi-Fi optimization capabilities. And then the third use case is applications, which is sort of the newer part of what we're doing within Corteca and here at Nokia, and also what's happening in the industry. And what we've essentially done is systematically separated the operating system from the application. So we're able to basically deploy individual applications much more seamlessly than previous. So different use cases like smart home or parental controls or Wi-Fi sensing, all different types of things that I know operators are really excited about, to provide an increased revenue opportunity, but also a better user experience. And overall, this whole Corteca solution, is really focused on the end user experience, giving the operator new revenue opportunities, but also reducing the costs in the overhead for the operator as well. So I've kind of given the overview. The next couple of slides goes into more detail on the cloud, on the applications, and on the device firmware. And just clicking through those, the one theme that you'll see is TR-369 and USB. So as I mentioned, we systematically went through our entire software platform and have updated it to be essentially an end-to-end USB system. So it's a USB controller on the cloud side. We're using the USB agent, open source agent on the device side, as well as the TR-181 data model. I mentioned sprinkling in easy mesh and data elements, other standards that I know that the Broadband Forum are very friendly with, to create this complete end-to-end experience. And why that's so important for us and for our business and for our customers is our customers are actually asking for standards. They don't want a proprietary solution to lock them into one cloud or another, or even on the device side, having to deploy proprietary agents onto the device is not a very friendly experience for the operator or the CPE vendor, or even software developers who have some innovative technology. So that's the kind of theme throughout. And I apologize, I can't see the slides, but that's sort of my overview.
I'm on your architecture diagram right now, so
yeah. So that's the typical stack. I mean, it's pretty simplified, but obviously we support. I kind of break it up in three different layers. We have the low layer, low-level APIs, and sort of the interface between the low-level software and the hardware. We have our middleware, which consists of things like our mesh stack, which we are an easy mesh compliant stack. So we have easy mesh certified products. And then we have our high layer, which is essentially the application layer. We also support lifecycle management, to basically manage the applications to and from the cloud. So yeah, that's how the stack basically, and that's what we call Corteca device software. And we have, I think 13 or 14 last I checked devices that are shipping that use the Corteca device software. I mean, Nokia has many devices. We've been doing the CPEs for more than 10 years, maybe 15 years. So we have lots of legacy devices that are legacy technology. But going forward, all of our new devices coming from broadband devices will support the Corteca platform. So it's a pretty exciting new software platform that we announced, and we're excited to talk more about with you all.
Cool. All right, David.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. So as Justin mentioned, USP is an important part of the Corteca product strategy. And the USP certification, we've learned, will teach you a lot about your products. Device management, Wi-Fi management are key for our operator customer base. Requirements such as support for multiple controllers, low latency telemetry access, bulk data, software module management are all now commonplace requirements. And the USP certification provides clear and direct proof point of conformance, which provides customers assurance that our Nokia Corteca device software systems will satisfy device and Wi-Fi management requirements for years to come. Additionally, beyond the proof point, the USP certification is valuable for conveniently finding and fixing gaps in your devices and doing so in the lab so that you can increase confidence in your integration testing with third-party controllers when it happens outside the lab. For example, in our recent certification effort this last spring, our primary device under test had been thoroughly tested for several quarters against the Corteca cloud controller and the HDM USP controller per our product definition. However, the product definition does not require a complete categorical USP conformance. And so using CD router and the supported USP conformance test suite, we were able to quickly find and fix several failure cases, which will help to ease our future integration with third-party controllers in multiple controller scenarios. So these were cases that were not part of our primary end-to-end Corteca product definition and were revealed to us through the conformance suite, and there were a couple of aha moments while we were getting those resolved. Let's see. Yeah, maybe if go to the next slide to kind of give a view of our certification effort, and I can describe some of the value of testing and more of learnings throughout the process. So honestly, the most important aspect of this testing for our team was the incorporation of CD router as a regression framework. So this enabled, specifically the USP conformance test suite, enabled our team to conduct an orderly test-driven development of our OB-USPA device integration, configuration, end-to-end execution, data model, implementation, etc., and provide us a ongoing baseline of, hey, here's how you stand with respect to completion criteria for USP certification. Now, as you can imagine, the Corteca development journey has been an ongoing balance of time to market, as well as, of course, investment in a standardized implementation. And during the product lifecycle, the development teams were able to, from early on, include the USP certification conformance testing within the daily testing practice. And during these early days, while we're getting the system ready for production customer use, maybe certification was not a critical priority, but we always knew what our pass percentage was. And from this baseline, when the time came to proceed with certification, the effort to resolve the remaining test cases was minimal, largely due to the CD router debug capabilities. And in that domain, the multi-level detailed logging support, packet support of CD router made the debug and RCA process very clear. The ability to extract MQTT properties, combine them with logs and packet captures provided our teams a clear path through the RCA process. Failures were often self-explanatory, and I'd also like to add that the execution times for the conformance suite were quick, and therefore, and that optimization of the conformance test suite and the execution time for hundreds of test cases was very good, and this allowed for the support for parallel execution across multiple devices, and that saved the team time every day and allowed for convenient validation of many devices in a short time. So, we've our experience with USP certification was definitely beneficial. We are planning a follow-up certification cycle in the beginning part of next year. As many of you are aware, and as is listed here, it's kind of I won't call it a la carte, but it's a feature-based certification structure. And so, we selected a set of features that we were able to confidently complete within our resource availability. And we are planning on a repeat certification round for next year, in which case we plan on expanding the number of covered devices and adding support for additional features as well to kind of have a logical phase 2 add-on. So I think that that provides a view as to the Nokia experience, and look forward to any questions that people may have. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, sure. Actually, there's a couple of things just dawned on me that I wanted to ask. One was just kind of a funny anecdote about you saying how fast the testing goes, and we used to joke here at QA Cafe anyway. Having also done the TR-369 testing, it's actually indicative of just how fast USP is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Fair point.
Because the protocol itself is so snappy that the testing just goes real.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did like that you mentioned was that I feel like there is probably a larger industry attitude towards certification to sort of wait until you're asked before you do it. But I like that you pointed out that the process of doing so revealed a whole bunch of other things, right? That is essentially what you would have just been doing if you were doing your regular testing, but you just sort of have the template to go about doing it and finding cool stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the confidence going through the process once has the team feeling very confident for our repeat round. So cool. It's an orderly process at the end of the day. And I won't mention any names, but compare it to some of the other certification processes that are out there. The completion criteria and what you can accomplish at the lab at home so that you're ready for your record run is very, very easy to manage.
Cool. And to talk about that process, I have Tim Winters with me.
Thanks,
He's going to talk about, where'd it go? There we go. Getting your product certified. This is how it works.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot today about how to go about doing what Nokia did. So there's a couple things here. Number one is, hey, you have to go get the test tool and run the individual test cases, and Nokia did a great job of talking about how that's done. So you get the test cases. We do have some customers that go to third parties still to do it, where they don't have it set up in their individual environments. So that's always an option. You can always do it yourself. We find that most customers nowadays are doing it themselves, right? And sometimes it's, they're doing it for a customer that they're going to be delivering the agent for. And then sometimes they're just actually doing it as part of their regular process. So one thing is we have a version of the test tools and the version of the test plan that's available on the BBF certification page. So one thing you want to be careful of is you want to make sure that you're looking at the latest data. You don't want to be running the test cases that are old. This program does move forward with new as USP rolls out, and we'll have more on that in a minute. But as new versions come out, the certification program updates, which is really nice. Makes it easy to keep up with the latest stuff and make sure that you're going to work in an environment where the controller updates. You want to make sure that the agents are making the same updates. We do also give out the last version of the test plan for people who are, not ready to jump right at the moment. We still release the last version of test scripts. We call them legacy to try to make it clear to people. You can still run those for a period of time, because obviously not everyone has a flag day where they can move forward. So we make the current version and the older version available, but the certification page has all the documentation to show you what versions. So you want to make sure you're running the latest stuff for sure. The other part about getting certified is you have to choose at least one of the options we have. Nokia, as you saw from the feature list, they they chose MQTT, which is a perfectly great one to choose. There's also Stomp and WebSockets. In the past, we've had ones like CoAP, but those are the three we have that we support today, that you can run over any one of those. You can choose one, you can choose more than one. You're allowed to go through and select however many MTPs, and we have test cases, obviously, that match those, right? So we want to make sure that if you're a controller and you're running Stomp, you want to make sure that they have Stomp listed on the certification page, right? So that's the goal of that, is to make sure that we avoid interop problems where, hey, we're doing MQTT and it's a WebSocket agent. That's not going to be a great situation. So that's where you want to pay attention to the feature IDs and go through and make sure you run the testing. Nokia did a great job talking about this, is a lot of people have started to integrate the conformance testing as part of their CI/CD. So one of the huge advantages of this program is it's self-testing. So you can get your hands on the tool and you can run it as much as you want. There's no like, I have to wait for a lab, I have to wait for time. It's a really cool thing the Broadband Forum has done. They still use a component of the lab, and we'll talk about that in a second, but what they are doing is they allow you to, the test tool is available. You can run it as much as you want as when you're ready. A lot of people run it on a nightly basis. To Nokia's point, it doesn't run, it doesn't take a long time. So a lot of people run the conformance test overnight. It's a couple of hours max. Depending on how many tests and configurations that you're doing, you can get it down pretty quick. And so that's been really helpful as part of the program. You can run it. Obviously, the approved test tool is a CD router that we've talked about. It's the one tool we have for this. It is, good news is it's self-contained in the sense that you don't have to get multiple parts. It all comes in one package and you can install it and run it. It also can just be part, if you're using CD router for other testing, it's really easy to just add those test cases, make sure you're running them. So if you have a CD router and you aren't running USP conformance and you do USP, I strongly urge you to start running those test cases and get an idea. It'll help you cover things. And then the last part of this is when you're done testing. So let's say you've been doing this as part of your CI/CD, or you're doing this as a one-off event. You take those results, you export them in CD router, and then you just send them to the lab for validation. And Jason, you can go to the next slide. That has the pretty flow chart. So yeah, you run those and you send them to an approved lab. In this case, the approved lab is the UNH IOL, which is really cool. I'm a little biased as an alumni of that lab, but they work with students and teach them networking. And in this case, it's really great because we want as many people to understand things like USP. So they'll look at the results and make sure they understand what's going on. Hopefully there are students involved, they're learning, and then they go out in the world and understand USP and can use it other places. So you determine what supported features you run. So step one is, hey, figure out what, MTPs are also other features that Nokia had on that list that people can figure out, profiles, different. The program's really good with that in the sense that we understand that not all agents will need to do everything everywhere all the time. So there's this cool feature list, which is, hey, what things do you think you can do that you support? And then you can select those. You run those tests with CD router. You then submit them to the UNH IOL. They review them. And then once they say everything's good, an email goes to the BBF and you're listed on their website. It's actually a really easy process to do, especially if it's part of your nightly runs. It's pretty easy. Whenever you do a release, you just ship the results off. Go ahead, Jason, to the next one. A couple of things to talk about here, just for everyone. This is where we're going to get a little bit into the nitty and gritty here. There are optional tests. I'm going to be careful how I say this. Like we say, there are features, and those are included, but there's no waiver process. It's not like you can fail a test and come in and say, hey, I failed this test, but I'd like the certification. I've worked in other programs where that's possible. So I just want to be clear. This is one of those scenarios where you have to have all passing for every feature you want to claim. There's feature IDs. We list them. Nokia did a great job showing those, so I don't need to go over that. One thing we try to make clear to people is we don't want people to use the minimum amount of feature request. And the reason for this is we want to make it clear when in this scenario, we're talking users of the certification. So operators or people may not even be operators, right? It might be someone who's buying the USP stack to integrate it into their CPE solution. What you want to list is all of the features that you support because it reduces interop problems, right? So a lot of these features are very clear. Like if they're looking for something, it's going to cause problems if they don't have it. The common example I give is if you're using two different MTPs, it's not going to be good. So you want to make sure that you list all the ones you support. So Some of the features come directly from the data model, and we're going to talk about that more in a second. We're always looking for feedback from the operator community. So one thing that I wanted to say here was if there are feature IDs that you think are really important and should be called out or added, we're happy to add additional test cases or feature IDs to help support individual cases as deployments happen. So this is kind of my call for the users of the certification. Hey, we're always looking for what things you want to call out and make mandatory. Go ahead, Jason, to the next one. Oh yeah, here's the fine print. So there's some really good things about the program here. One is you have to be a member of the Broadband Forum, which makes sense. You can't access the test plans, the dev versions of the test plans. Obviously, when they're published, they become available. But if you want to see as they're being or have input into the test plans, you need to be a Broadband Forum member, which is really important. They do a lot to support this program and all of the things around it. The other interesting thing that comes up a lot is derivative products. And this program does a really good job. And Jason's called out the quote here of how you can include derivative or future versions of your product, right? So we fully understand that you might put that USP stack on multiple things that are released at any given time. So this program is pretty, I don't want to say permissive, but it does a really good job. It doesn't require you bring in or test every implementation that you make, right? There are some certification programs that, if you make a change on the box, you have to recertify, right? Obviously, this one is on the other end of that spectrum, where it's very understanding that, hey, this is a software, this USP agent is a software implementation, and it might be in several places, and you claim them. It's self-policing, and everyone's always done a really good job with this, of making sure that they update or keep the right information available for people who are trying to figure out what USP agent they have running on their stack. All the test program documents are available to BBF members. We follow the BBF process for all of that. There's, JIRA tickets. If you have an issue, if you see something, say something. We have all of that. They go through a process, and that's all through the bus working group. I just wanted to touch on a couple things that come up a lot. One thing here is beyond the actual certification test, there's a lot of data model verification that people need to do. And this has to come around with, data models are complex and are constantly changing. I think this year this has got to be a record. I think there might be 3 versions, 217, 218, and 219 might all be released this year from the bus group. The data model seems to be going through a lot of changes, which is great. A lot of people are interested and have a lot of things they want to add to it. So a lot of, you want to make sure you're also validating your data model. The USP certification is really focused on the USP protocol and less on the data model verification. So that's kind of like a separate process that people have always done. They did it with CWMP, and I think USP is following a very simple evolution of that. One thing to keep in mind is there are other certification programs who are dealing with this or other software. So RDKB, their profiles come with CD routers if you're interested in those. And on the Purple side, they have a certification program actually for their high-level API that follows the Purple profile. And that's really them profiling what they expect in their data model if you're running Purple OS. So both of those are instantiations, basically, of data model verification. Also, you can do your own custom one, right? There's a lot of vendor extensions or when people have done very specific things. You can go look for those. Another one that's come up a lot lately, and I think this is really an interesting space, is CWMP and USP interactions. So CWMP or TR-369, several operators are moving forward with what I would call a slow rollout of USP, so they're not tearing everything out instantly. The common use case I've been hearing lately is, using CWMP for firmware updates. They have that under control. They can update the boot images, all of that. There's no need for them to change that, but they want to use USP to actually, look at Wi-Fi, do bulk data is a big one, right? And we talked today about speed of the 2 protocols, right? USP is way snappier. And so if you want to get that data and be able to react to it, USP is the way. So I think there's some really interesting test cases for those, is making sure that they interact the way that you want, and that you're able to use both CWMP and USP if that's your deployment strategy, which seems to be, as I said, becoming a little bit more. And then the last one is make sure if you're doing USP, make sure you're creating your own scenarios to make sure you can do what you want to do, whether it's, controlling Wi-Fi, bringing the device, rebooting it, any of those things. getting data. Bulk data seems to be a really popular one lately, where people are trying to get as much data out of their CPE and make informed decisions. And all of that's great through USB. And speaking of CWMP and USP interactions, I think the next slide's the plugfest one, Jason, maybe? Yeah. Okay. So this is a really cool event that we're doing in September at the UNH IOL, that we're going to go and test some of the latest USP stuff. It's a great time for people to come in who are new to USP, haven't done a whole lot of work, or if you're been doing USP for a while, we're doing some of the newer stuff, software module management. So this is Nokia had this in their slide, containers basically running on top of CPEs. So USB is great at making sure that containers can be downloaded, installed. They have a whole module to deal with this. So that's a great thing we'll be working on. We'll be doing, as I mentioned, the dual management protocols, CWMP and USB, or TR-369 and USB, making sure how they interact, work together. We've also seen lately a lot more multi-controller tests. We've had some requests for people who are looking at like running USB controllers on phones and then also the cloud version of it, and just making sure that when those two controllers are talking to the same CPE, that all of that works. So we have some test cases for that. And then data collection, the bulk data stuff that we talked about. Wi-Fi is another big one. So I urge everyone, if you're into USP, please, you should register for this plugfest. It's going to be a great time. Tim, I'm sure you've got some stuff to say about that.
Yeah, that's, I just threw my hand up. Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Tim was saying there, that we're still working, let's say, writing the script on some of the newer test cases for some of these newer areas, like the data collection, Wi-Fi, using a Wi-Fi server. We're talking about exploring some USP services, which is an extension to software module management. So I'd really like to, if you want to get involved now. Like I said, we're still working out some of these tests, and it'd be a good time to become involved in, like Tim said, come out there. It's a good time. It's good. This is a great pre-test, right? This is a great ground to try out and find out where you're at with all of this. CD routers there, they'll run a blast at you and they'll tell you exactly where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good... Go ahead,
No,
Jason.
I was just going to say we did get a lot of feedback, at least last time, from people who had not done the in-person thing before, and it was sort of a light speed amount of things that they learned, being able to do that stuff in real time.
Yeah, it's a fast-paced environment for sure.
I am putting in the chat the link to the test plan. This is what Tim was mentioning. If you have comments about it, please.
Yeah, it's in the Broadband Forum wiki. So it's for those who do have a Broadband Forum login, you can view it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to leave that up there for now and start to dive into some questions. We have a lot of questions about TR-369 versus USP, and I want to get to those. Tim, I know you typed some answers to people, but there's stuff I do want to address. But before I do that, I think there was there was one question that had come up earlier about operators asking for the certification. And David, I think you addressed this a little bit, but I wonder if you could sort of repeat yourself there in terms of like,
Sure.
Even if it's not explicit, it's implied.
Yeah. I mean, so let's see. So within our customer base, from the RFP prompts that we receive, we get very clear requirements for USP support at the device level. Sometimes there will be itemized requirements for individual USP features, like we need bulk data, like Tim said. That's a popular case. People, the value of being able to have the low latency, low granularity telemetry data is provides really good business value for these operators. That's another good example of something that might be itemized. We're not seeing a lot of itemized individual requirements for USP certification. However, we are seeing, and this is consistent across the customer base, a drive towards standardization, and and other, adjacent certs. So, as part of I can speak from the Nokia product strategy. For us, putting 2 and 2 together was very clear that USP certification is an emerging customer requirement, and we do expect to see it called out as an individual requirement line item in the near future.
Yeah, and I can add to that, because if you think about just what USB is from a definition perspective, it's a standard that allows interoperability not only between a cloud controller and a remote local device, but what we're using it for is to do interoperability between Nokia solutions and third-party solutions, which is what our customers are asking for. So, I mean, obviously, Nokia would love to have 100% of every operator's business, but that's just not a reality. Most operators, from a device side, will dual source at a minimum. Many operators have, 10, 12, 20 different CPEs in their network currently that they want to interoperate with. So I think just as USB becomes more commonplace, as standards, operators start to implement standards more and more. And I believe interop is going to continue to be a really important topic. And that's going to drive more and more need for standardization and certification and testing to make sure that these things interop together. That's why we're so excited about the plugfest coming up next month, because last year was great progress. We've made a lot of developments this year, and this interop situation is only going to get more and more complex. So having great certification solutions to complement the interop is going to be critical going forward.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I did have one certification. Tim, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to add on to that. It's like not only that, I mean, what you're seeing at the plugfest is the next generation of certification, right? This is where we get out all the new features and start playing with them. So, if you're interested, not only coming up to speed with USB, but look into the future, that's a great place to do it.
Oh, actually, thank you, because that's a great segue question to something that I wanted to have Tim Winters talk about, and that is the relationship between the version of the test plan and the version of USP itself,
Right.
and how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that really quick. So, USP 1.4 just came out. I don't know, what was it, Jason, a couple months ago?
Weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah. So the test plan currently is focused on 1.3, the previous version. So typically what we do is we lag sometime between 6 months and a year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, that spec just came out. We don't expect to have implementations immediately. So we wait a little bit for the dust to settle on that and make sure that there's a couple of implementations out there as we write test cases. We want to make sure those exist. So in this case, the current test plan is focused on 1.3, even though 1.4 is out. We will update it to 1.4 probably sometime in 25. And then you can go ahead and move forward testing that. But yeah, there's like I said, the page has a really good write-up of what versions of CD router switch when the versions happen, when the updates happen. We're always going to lag it a bit, and that's intentional, because if we updated the certification, no one would be able to get it right out of the gate. So we intentionally lag it sometime between 6 months and a year, and that seems to have worked really well for the programs. Most people, I'm not aware of anybody coming late to the game saying, hey, we wanted to certify the old version. It seems to work really great. So that's been how we've been doing that as a community.
There was a question about can you get the certification only for one MTP?
Yeah, you can only get it for one if you want. You can choose one of the three. So you can choose either WebSockets, MQTT, or Stomp are the three that you can choose. You can also do more than one, but yeah, you can just do one. And for MQTT, you can do either 3.1.1 or 5.0. Either version is supported by the program now.
Yeah. So, and if you do multiple, that's all part of that single certification, right? It's just more feature IDs.
Yeah, the way that works is we recommend that you do most of the testing with one of them, and then you do the individual test for the second one. So people always wonder about how to do that, and we say there's a lot of test cases that are MTP agnostic, right? They don't care which one you're running over. So we recommend that you run those with one of the whatever ones you've chosen, right? MQTT, WebSocket, or Stomp. And then if you wanted to switch, you can run the Stomp section. There are test cases who are specific to Stomp. As an example, so you could run everything with MQTT and then just run the Stomp section with Stomp. is how we deal with that. We don't want to make people rerun all of the test cases. That's seems to be excessive. So
so there's a collection of questions about the migration from TR-369 and sort of the deployment of USP. And I covered a little bit about that in the first slide. But Rhonda, I'm wondering if you could grab the YouTube playlist that has the USP Summit videos in it and throw it in the chat. Long story short, for the people who are asking about like the business drivers that the operators have, there's a collection of videos a collection of presentations that we recently published that were at the USP Summit in March. And there were two very big ones, particularly from Vodafone and from DT, about how it is that they're using USP. And then from the summit that was 6 months before that, there's another couple of really good ones on the operator panel that we had. And ultimately, it comes down to what exactly the use case is that you're going to use USP for. And that includes just using it for new stuff and keeping TR-369 for old stuff. It includes having a clear migration path where you're using both at the same time. Some of it is using USP only on new devices, right? Or even on particular devices. So we had one operator at the summit in 2023 that mentioned that they were only using it on their set-top boxes to start, and then switching it over to their other CPE later. So there's a number of cases out there that you can all watch on the Broadband Forums YouTube channel. And if Rhonda grabs it, throws it in the chat, then you guys can all see that.
I'm working on it. I'm getting it now.
So should we talk about TR-98 real quick?
Well, I answered the question.
I know. So TR-98 has been deprecated for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I understand it's out there a lot. It is not, the USP does not support TR-98. It's unless there's some vendor extension magic that somebody is shoehorning into there, then it doesn't. So from that perspective, yes, there would have to be updates. The backwards compatibility that Tim, that I think you addressed in that other question, the backwards compatibility around TR-369 USP is almost entirely about the data model, right? So that if you're using TR-181 already, device 2, there is much less that you have to do to make that migration.
Yeah, well, I was just pointing out it's a completely different protocol. So there's no, between TR-369 and USP, there is no backward compatibility protocol-wise. Data model-wise, like Jason just said, if you are using a TR-69 implementation with an updated TR-181, it's a lot easier because we have leveraged the same data model for USP and just been adding on to it.
Yeah, and we've done some tricks, to your point, Jason, on the vendor side, specifically for operators to do some tricks between 98 and 181. And it's pretty cumbersome. I mean, there's some features you can do, but it's very custom, and it goes against the spirit of USB and the spirit of, TR-369, which is standards-based. So, unfortunately for many operators, well, and I think you guys have maybe performed some of these surveys, but there's really good data out there that shows the interest in moving from 69 to TR-369, and either people have already started or they're planning to. It's a difficult step, but there's so many benefits to USB that, at least here at Nokia, we just believe it's a matter of time. And whether it be the device side, I mean, you're seeing a huge opportunity right now with the introduction of Wi-Fi 7, where many operators are choosing, in some cases, in emerging markets, leapfrog from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 7. And you're going to see this big churn of devices. So as operators deploy new devices, because of the Wi-Fi 7 demand, more than likely they're going to be deploying a TR-181 data model and utilizing the USB protocol for communication. So I think that'll also help to transition the market over. So I think the future's bright is what I was going to say.
There was a question about sort of now, because this is new, is there, going through the certification process and people learning what they're learning, is there sort of a FAQ of test problems that have come up in the past? There isn't like an official one. Obviously us at QA Cafe have experienced it from a great many different vendors. So sort of our own support team has that knowledge in their brains. If you watch one of my last podcasts where we interview our Brian from here at QA Cafe, he talks about that specifically about how, it's like, it's like, yes, I do actually know a whole bunch of stuff that's happened to multiple people. So we sort of sit in the middle of all that going on. But the place that stuff does get tracked is actually within the issues list of the Broadband Forum. So if you're a member of the Broadband Forum, you will get to see those issues being suggested and tracked and have the ability to submit your own, right? So, and most of the time, those things either come as new test cases, changes to existing test cases, or changes to the spec, right? So if there's something that's not clear that came out from a lot of testing, then we end up making an issue for it and putting it in the next version of USP.
I'll be part of the community.
So this is a good thing to clarify. Does certification only concern software or hardware too? Does each target have to be certified even if they're against the same agent? We covered that a little bit.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The answer to this is you get the software stack certified. So you get in our case, we're doing the USP agent. Sometimes, this is where it gets a little blurry. Sometimes that agent is unique to a piece of hardware, so it gets a little confusing. But ultimately, we are certifying when you commit for a certification, you're doing a software version of the USP agent. If you apply that to many hardware platforms, we support that in the derivative products section. But yeah, it's really we're certifying the software, and you can list the hardware versions that software runs on, is how I would present that. Is how we deal with that problem.
We realize that otherwise, like you said before, it'd be kind of onerous to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah.
Yep. One other thing to add, Jason, there was another question that was about justification of moving to USP, and there are just things you can do with USP that you cannot do with TR-69. So there's everything we've done moving forward, multiple controllers, very obvious big things, right? That we've added to USP, we're leveraging and adding features on top of that, because the way that we designed USP was with things like operations, to where I don't have to have, or excuse me, I can have an unlimited set of functions and features, because I have this new cool thing called an operation that I can provide, and I can add it right into the data model. So that's the bigger answer to the TR-69 versus USP is you're just, it's end of life. There's things it doesn't do that USP gives you the ability to do.
Yeah, and
yeah, go ahead.
Just to add on to that, one of the big ones we've been hearing lately for people moving over is the controller of the applications. The CWMP doesn't have any concept of that, and this seems to be a very popular subject, and so that seems to be motivating people. So that's another one to keep in mind, is to be able to support all of that. USP is the way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, when we designed USP, we were going with an IoT set of mind, right? We're like, hey, what are we gonna? Why can't we control these? Why can't we turn lights on and off? So we weren't thinking from a network management as much as we were an actual practical application, right? So when you were talking earlier about, hey, this is a pretty efficient protocol. Yeah, that's by design. That's why we went this direction, because we saw that it could be a lot more than just a network management single controller type of environment.
Right. And ironically, and Spets is a big champion of what I'm about to say. Ironically, that's the reason why the feature ID table exists, because we understood that there would be very, very, very bare bones agents that might not have very complicated data models. And so some of the tests you just can't do because there's nothing to do at all.
Right. And that's a great point, right? Is that we have a tailored certification that you can do the very base thing to become a USP certified product. It doesn't have to have a lot of functions and features, and it can be a very basic device, right?
But you do have to do everything that it does support, or else you're gonna see problems.
Yeah.
We actually had some miscommunication one time where they sort of saw the feature IDs as optional, and so they had operations but didn't test any of them at all, because they just wanted to do the absolute minimum, and then it didn't actually work when they tried to deploy it in the field, because it does do operations and they didn't test it. All right. Okay. The only other thing I do want to bring up is that this is the 20th anniversary of TR-369, and there's a lot of goings on in that department. Most notably, part of the reason why we're doing some of this dual management protocol stuff at the plugfest is because we keep talking about those that transition. And then at the November meeting, if you have ever considered wanting to go to a broadband forum meeting, the November meeting in San Diego, we're going to be talking an awful lot about the legacy of TR-369 and it turning 20 and the broadband forum itself turning 30 years old, and the transition to USP and some of the things that have consistently come up about that process. So it'll be a good time. The most fun
A
you'll ever
smart
have
home
in
session,
standards.
right? You're developing a smart home session for that, right?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
specifically. Yep. There'll be a what we call a town hall session on Monday to talk about everything about the smart home, and then in our broadband user services group, we have a couple of dedicated sessions to talk about how things have progressed in the relationship with Matter and the CSA and all that. So it's going to be a good time. Here's a good question. Is there a financial aspect to submitting the exported results to the validation lab? Yes. You do have to pay for the final certification.
Yeah, and please reach out to the IOL. They set that fee. I don't know it offhand, but please reach out to them if you're curious. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
All of their prices are the same for everyone as a neutral third party. So reach out to them.
All right. Any other questions before I repeat myself a couple times on those things we just covered? There is still time to join the plugfest. Like we said, it's a very good time. It's extremely valuable. I know at least one of the vendors is putting out a video soon about just how valuable it is. And we would love to see you there and meet you. So do look forward to that. Do check out the latest version of the certification. If you have any questions about how to do that, how to get CD router, how to go through the process, you can reach out to any of us at the Broadband Forum or here at QA Cafe or at the UNH IOL, and we can give you more information. And yeah, other than that, thanks you guys. Thanks for you guys for throwing this together, and I think it was a good thing for us to say. It's been a while since we've covered this topic, and there were enough new things going on. And really, thank you, Nokia, for putting together that sort of use case for us, because I think people really do need to hear sort of why it is that vendors want to go out of their way to do this in the first place. And I hope it was really valuable. For those of you who did ask, yes, we will send out these slides and the video to anyone who consented to be contacted by us at the end of the webinar. Rhonda, do you have anything else you want to say to those prospective members out there before we close out?
I would just say, please consider joining us for the fall meeting. You can email me at info@broadband-forum.org. Whether you're a member or non-member, I do offer complimentary passes to non-members who want to consider joining. It's always worthwhile to come spend that time with these experts. So you will come away learning a lot. And if you're a member and you want to join that meeting, but you don't know how, just reach out to me, and I'm always here and happy to help.
Ready. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Thanks
Thank you.
all.
Thanks.